So what is unique, or I think important, just as to establish the conversation about the Jewish perspective of national mission and universal vision, is the fact that we do believe in some sort of vision, some sort of plan, some sort of outline for humanity. I think there's a mistake that most people probably in their lives kind of hold by, even though maybe not consciously, and that is that our job as humans is to do the best with what we're given. Now, not to say that that's wrong, but we don't necessarily zoom out and look at the quote-unquote proverbial forest and kind of deal with life's challenges and life's perspectives on an individual level. But when we open up the Jewish sources, we find a lot about a kind of responsibilities on a cosmic, on a global, on certainly a national, and certainly on a species-wide, universal level. So I think just as an introduction, what's very important to realize is that we have a big picture plan. We have a start and an end to purpose. We believe, obviously, and I think this is something that's very well established, like once you accept the idea of God, let's assume that you accept that, right? A lot of people don't accept it. Or they accept an idea of God that's not exactly the Jewish God or the Jewish definition of God. Let's assume you do accept the Jewish definition of God. The basic idea, one power, right? Not bound by the same rules as us finite creations, right? It doesn't exist in time and space. Incredible intelligence, that's something we can't even wrap our heads around. Once you accept that as a given, we're assuming that that's true. The next step has to be purpose. Why is that? Because we look at the world and we see sophistication, we see complexity, we see details, we see purposeful creations. We see 8.7 million different species, and each one of them is so incredibly complex and so wonderful and so fantastic, and everything's so perfect. We see so much design in the world. We see so much intelligence in the world. Once you presuppose that there's a designer, well, then there has to be a purpose for everything. I think it's crazy to say that I'll get to you in a second. That God does exist, but this is all purposeless or purposefulness, or this is meaningless. Right? I think that's absolutely crazy. And the question is, okay, so what's the meaning? What's the purpose? We accept God. Okay, fantastic. Well, what's the purpose? What's it all about? We get sometimes caught up with our lives and our jobs and our careers and our families and all the things that are happening in the news and people we meet and our friends and their social circles, and that's all very important. We're not trying to. Of course, that's important. That's life. But every once in a while, we should hopefully ask ourselves the question, okay, so what's it all about?
I failed to comprehend the reason why mosquitoes are.
Okay, well, that's a good question. There's a great midrash about King David. King David, he as a prophet, so he told God, he's like, I get everything, besides for spiders. That's the one thing he couldn't wrap his head around.
Thank you. I agree with that.
So the Almighty tells him, it's okay, you'll see. And then we know David, in the beginning of his reign as king, so he was king, but in fact there was a different person on the throne, and a different person as the monarch. And that would be none other than Saul. David's the king, but only like God and Samuel, and only they recognize it. It's not recognized by anyone. And Saul undertakes this pursuit of David. And he sends all his people and his armies and his generals, everyone to try to find David. And if you read the book of Samuel, you find a little bit about the stories of how David's trying to evade capture and execution in the hands of Saul and Saul's men. Like Saul tells him, listen, whoever wants to marry my daughter, I want, David, you can marry my daughter. Fantastic. But I want you to bring me 100 foreskins of the Philistines. with the hopes that he'll try to kill the Philistines, and then you know what'll happen? Try to kill 100 Philistines, and you know you'll probably die. And David comes back with 200.
Is that where he tricks them into doing circumcision and then kills all of them?
Well, that would be Jacob's kids. Yeah. Jacob's Shimon and Levi. Either way, that's what David was undergoing. Now there was one time where David is hiding in. He's running away, and there's an area, I guess, and there's a cave, and he runs into the cave to hide in the cave, and then a spider comes and creates this web on top of the cave entrance, and then when Saul's people passed by the cave, said, "Oh, clearly David didn't go in here because we just saw David 5 minutes ago, and there's already a whole complex net of a spider's web, cobweb covering. It must be he didn't go in there." And that's what he says to David. "Oh, that's why I created spiders." But to answer your question, we don't know the details of everything. You know, I think it's foolish to assume that we as humans can really understand every detail about why God does what He does. However, we have the Torah. You know, the Torah is God's method of communication to us as to what He wants us to know. And in the Torah, we also find He tells us about purpose and about meaning for life. And therefore, we do have some sort of insight as to the big picture. Okay, so how's that for introduction? We're good? Okay, next. Chosen people. A terminology that all of us are probably familiar with. Is that right? Anyone knows where that's from? Where's the term chosen people from? After where?
Sinai, right?
After Sinai? What does it say? You know what? I don't think that there is a source in Jewish literature about chosen people. I don't believe that there is. There's other, like you said, after Sinai. After Sinai, it says that we will be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Mm-hmm. In Scripture, it talks about us being the light unto the nations.
The light unto the nations. That's where.
Yeah. Well, yes. Yeah, maybe the word "chosen" is coming. But either way, I think it could be very unsettling. Like when I say we're chosen, what does that imply about everyone else?
Nobody else is.
Nobody else is chosen. Is that right? Yeah. Doesn't that sound a little
nobody else is
arrogant?
To lead.
A little bit.
You know, and what does it even mean to be chosen? We're chosen to do what? We're chosen by whom? Why were we chosen? We won the God lottery. We're His chosen. Everyone else, doesn't really care. You know. Okay, that's good. So we're receptacles of the Torah. Is that where it ends? That's what starts and ends.
No.
Of reading the Torah.
I agree. There is seemingly something very special. I think we could point, historically, to the fact that, we seem to be an anomaly in history. We're always small in nation, we're always hated, and we always still survive no matter what is done to us. No matter what atrocity is done to us, we seem to always regroup and reestablish ourselves after a couple of years.
Is that because we're chosen, or is that?
I don't know. It means it seems there's something different and special about us. I'm saying even if you disregard what we as Jews say about Jews, we look at just the facts that are undeniable. There is something special, perhaps.
Do we have an option?
To be chosen or not?
Or not?
I don't have an option. You have an option? I don't remember opting in.
Well, I don't know. I think maybe.
Oh, now as Jews we know we cannot opt out.
At the beginning, Jews said, "Hey, whoa, we don't want to prescribe to this."
Yeah, when did we opt in? Even who opted in for us?
How much of that choosing was maintained by obedience?
Is this all Moses' fault?
Promises were given with, well, if you keep obeying me.
Well, then what?
How much of that is actually?
But does it ever say if you disobey me, you're done? It doesn't say that.
No,
it says if you disobey me, I will destroy you and obliterate you, and just there'll be little crumbs left, but there'll always be something left. And you're still chosen, and you're chosen specifically, which is another interesting thing. We're chosen, yet you look at the Torah, and what it talks about us, it is very harsh terms about what's the nature of this agreement. We're chosen clearly not for riches or for might or for massive numbers in population. Well, what are we chosen for? And and how does this all fit together? It's a term we're familiar with, and what does it mean? A lot of other nations say that they're chosen. The Japanese flag is a big red ball because we're all the way east, and the sun comes to us first. And screw you guys. So are they chosen for something else? We're chosen for something else. We have our thing we're chosen for. They have their thing they're chosen for.
Isn't there a midrash that talks about the giving of the Torah and that God took it to all the nations and told each nation, and they said, no, hey, you can't slap people with fishes. Whoa, well, that's how we make a living. We slap people with fishes. Well, you can't murder. We murder for a living. We can't do that, so forget it. We don't want it. And then he took it to the Jewish people, and they said, hey, you want this? And he says, we will do, and then we will hear.
Na'aseh v'nishma.
Na'aseh v'nishma.
Okay, so that's where we, our forefathers, let's assume, our forefathers accepted upon themselves to do the Torah.
Right.
Let's hold that thought. It's a very, very, very powerful thought.
So
Maybe that's when everyone was given the option, and we weren't necessarily chosen by God. We were the ones who opted in. We chose, so to speak.
We chose.
We were the ones that signed up, and we said,
Right. But to be chosen, doesn't Isaiah talk about that? What it is in the revelation of being chosen will one day be revealed. And isn't it in Isaiah that tells us what that is? Although it means
but I think that we don't have to. I think that's also a narrow perspective. Like, we're Jews. We have a Torah. You mentioned we accepted the Torah. We have a special relationship with the Almighty. We're a nation that butts a lot of historical trends. But what's the big picture? What's it all about? What is the Jewish people's role in the universe, in history?
It's to bring the restoration of the world, right?
Ooh, booyah. Bring the restoration of the world. Nice.
Is that what the Muslims talk about?
Well,
theirs is the destruction of the world, not the restoration.
It's the floors talking.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me get my feet off. Sorry.
Dennis, go ahead.
Evil influence.
What you were saying?
Oh, no. My question was going to be about who did the choosing?
Another good question. Which chose in by what, for what? Okay, so let's keep all these questions in mind. Like, we said something very, very powerful thought you said. So I want to share with you guys a third element, a little introduction that I think it's going to really open up this can of worms, or this can of, not worms, we don't eat worms, this can of gefilte fish, this can of pickles. So we find, who here is familiar with the idea of a 6,000-year world? You know what that? Have you heard that?
I've heard of it.
Yeah,
We might have talked about it. Okay, so there's this idea of a 6,000-year world, right? Where does that come from? That comes from the Talmud. The Talmud says as follows. They taught in the Academy of Elijah, which is, by the way, a normal introduction of a Talmud, where it would give you the source material. Where was this teaching, publicized? So it was in a Academy of Torah scholarship of Elijah, okay. And it says as follows. Well, what they teach, 6,000 years is the world. The world is 6,000 years. 2,000 years chaos, 2,000 years Torah, 2,000 years Messiah. What this is telling us is, big picture, the plan and the history of the world. It's a 6,000-year world. And it's broken down into, to three parts. There's the first part called chaos, next part called Torah, and third part called Messiah, which, by the way, should tell us that Messiah is not just an individual. Messiah is a 2,000-year process of sorts. But I think that these three sections are three different steps, three different elements in the ultimate purpose of the world, that is. And let's start with number one, chaos. What does chaos mean?
Very bad things.
Disorder.
Disorder, destruction. Means this is very bad. It's a very bad term. In fact, the word that's used in Hebrew is tohu. And tohu is the word that we use in Hebrew to describe the state of the universe at its most nascent stages, where there's really essentially almost no form. There's no life. There's no nothing. It's chaos. It's chaotic. essentially. Like if you were to just isolate what it was like, a second after the Big Bang, it's chaos, scientifically, right? That's the same word that's used to describe it. There's some disorder. And then we have Torah. And Torah is Torah. What the Torah scroll we hold in the synagogue, right? So that's what Torah is, right? The Messiah, we think of as Messiah as this great individual, this powerful leader that's going to affect tremendous change in the world. What are these three stages? So, we're told the idea of Tikkun Olam. So what's Tikkun Olam? What do the words Tikkun Olam mean?
The world to come. This world.
No. Tikkun Olam. Fixing the world, exactly.
Correction.
Right, now, this is a term that has been publicized, gotten very popular lately, the past 50 years. Why? I don't know. It's one of the great mysteries of 20th century Jewry as to why this terminology has become like a credo for the Jewish people. When in fact, the first time we find these words of Tikkun Olam is more than 3,000 years ago. And in fact, in the Mishnah, which is 2,000 years old, we find Tikkun Olam, an entire chapter talking about Tikkun Olam. But what does it mean, Tikkun Olam? What are the words? It means fixing the world. What does it tell us about the world? It's broken. Now, what happens when you buy something that's broken and you want a refund? What are the terms of the warranty?
How much time?
What if it's not necessarily broken, but just unrefined? Kind of in a raw state.
Well, tikkun means to fix.
What broken assumes
Imperfect?
it was not broken at some point, and then something broke it. What if it wasn't?
Well, it was Eden first.
Or maybe it was broken by design. Maybe it was chaotic by design. And you know what? If you look around, where is all that chaos? I don't see any chaos. Your body works perfectly well, hopefully, right? Most people. The ecosystem works very, very well. There's a small sliver of temperature where human life, essentially life, is possible. And we're right there. We're exactly 93 million miles, change, plus or minus, away from the sun. Perfectly designed how to survive. A little closer, a little further away, we're either toast or frozen popsicles. There's liquid water. Like, the world seems to be very organized. It's a world that's capable of habitation. Everything is so balanced and everything's so perfect. What's broken about the world? And why will we get a broken world if the Almighty does everything perfectly?
It wasn't broken to begin with. It
Yeah,
got broke with Adam's sin, right?
Who says that? Who's Adam?
I thought it was actually in the
didn't
Talmud.
they talk about the vessels breaking?
Yeah, and the sparks of life.
No, the Talmud doesn't say anything about sparks of life.
Now you're talking about.
Yes, you may have heard some Zohar or something like that. No, it's sparks of life in the Talmud. Wrong book. But
It doesn't talk about the.
Adam, what happened with Adam is a very interesting part of this discussion.
So
But let's,
Eden wasn't
which is interesting, by the way. If you notice, I said 6,000 years. If you ask scientists how old the world is, they'll give you a number that's around 13.8 billion years. A minor discrepancy, but what's a few billion among friends, right?
Except.
So what's important to realize is,
Universe.
I'm sorry.
Except on the edge of the universe, where it's expanding. Isn't the perspective?
You're giving an answer, but the true answer,
They did a calculation of life.
Those first days of creation.
the true answer is
They did
that
a
this
calculation of life
6,000
back to
years,
6,000 old.
this 1,000-year
Because the
clock
light refraction of the light
starts from after the first week.
Is in the universe.
From after the first week or from after Adam's creation?
No, after the first week.
They started counting after Adam, right?
That's right. So what happened before that is not part of our calculation, which is very interesting to point out because
No, after
You
the
can't have
first
a day
week or after
without
Adam.
making
after the
the
first
sun
week.
and the moon.
After the
But
first
Adam,
Adam
when
was
was
done
it?
on the fourth day.
sixth
So
day.
how old
Fifth,
is the
sixth
Earth?
day. I was like, what are you talking about?
I don't know how old the Earth
Who took
is.
census back then?
No, on the fourth day is where we meet the sun and the stars and all the constellations, which is
So you can't have days.
you could have days. We don't know what that means.
So that was the third.
That was day four.
Fourth was the animals.
No, fifth was animals.
But yeah, fifth was animals. Fourth was
Fifth was
I
some
know
animals
fourth
as well.
was the plants.
Third was the water.
No,
Fourth
that'll
was
be
the
day- that'll be
animals,
day
Separation
sixth
of the
was
waters.
People.
Either way, Adam appears in day 6, and Adam, in fact, is the last one. By the way, why is Adam the last? Why is humanity the last that's created? Who knows?
It's dessert.
He didn't want
Huh?
to destroy
Save the best
before.
for last.
Save the best for last.
Well, we had to keep what was made. Take care of it.
Before.
Put Adam in the environment.
Shop was
Put
supposed to
Adam.
be 7, so
So he can.
Well,
It would be an
because
awful
Adam
lot of
was
They conquered
empty
before.
space
everything.
without a man. Wasted space.
No, but if man's most important, man, maybe man should be on day 4
You
or day
always
2.
save the best for last.
Well, the environment
Woman.
for the things that were created first.
Yeah, see?
That's right.
environment, yeah.
So
Woman
Talmud
was
gives 2
actually
answers.
last, so there's
Talmud asks the
that.
question, and it gives 2 answers. One answer is your question, is your answer. That is that essentially man is the purpose of all. Thus, you create the arena, and then you bring in your future presentation. That's number 1. And number 2, very interesting, back to the mosquitoes that someone mentioned, that it says that if someone gets haughty, if a man gets haughty, you tell him the mosquito was created before you. The yitush, which is a fly. The fly was created before you. Thus, to kind of make us realize that we're not we're not so significant. To hone us, to mitigate our tendency for arrogance. Interestingly, but our 6,000-year clock only begins from after that week. Thus, essentially, from after Adam's and that whole fiasco, whatever happened there. Adam is not the same kind of human that we are. It's not.
But you mentioned, did God give us a perfect world or an imperfect world?
That was my question. I said we were talking about fixing a world that implies that it's broken, but first of all, what's broken?
6,000-year world, then obviously it was the chaos
Does
world
it
they
say
gave us.
somewhere?
to
It
begin
just
with.
I've heard this around that the world was created 13 times before perfection.
That's Kabbalistic.
Oh, that's okay.
No, it does mention somewhere that we went
We were
through
trying to
this.
find that source.
It's there somewhere. That Either way, these are like advanced questions.
Yeah,
And I don't think it's so relevant to us. We're dealing with this world, and this world is a 6,000-year world, which starts after Adam, and it's broken, and we can't figure out why it's broken. And you guys are trying to evade the question. We have a broken world.
First, before we expand.
We have a broken
Yeah.
world. Everyone agrees we have a broken world.
So is Eden perfect or not? I guess is my question.
What's Eden? I don't know what Eden is. Where do I find it? That's all from Adam's time. I don't want to hear about Eden or Gan Eden or anything like that. What happens when we die? What?
Creating the world, and when was it broken?
Or maybe it was part of
But
creation.
who says it got broken? I mean, are you saying that if it's a broken world, that implies that at one point it was not broken?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not broken,
It's not possible to deliberately create something that's broken.
but it's not broken.
Possible.
Why not?
God created it perfectly, but in order for us to be a part of that creation, our job is to create and reveal the light of God within everything around us. So God hid himself within everything around us so we can reveal God by doing mitzvot and things of that nature. So we help bring out the light of God in everything that's out there. So it's a matter of raising or elevating those things within the world to bring back that light to reflect God again in its perfection.
That was deep.
How
That was
about
good.
that?
And I think that you underscored something very, very important. Even you were focusing on the other half. That there's only one thing, one entity that is real, that has any intrinsic value. You start off Maimonides. The first word of Maimonides, he kind of separates everything into 2 categories. One is God, and one is not God. And anything like God is not dependent, contingent, reliant on anything else. And everything else, from the entire world itself, the entire universe, animate, inanimate things, angels, spiritual things, physical things, humans, everything is contingent on God.
So where does that say
Everyone's
this?
gonna play my level.
Like, where is that word?
Well, I said I quoted that from Maimonides.
Okay.
Maimonides is the unquestioned authority on defining Jewish philosophy. Where he got it from, it's probably a collection of different sources, Jewish sources. But that's not such a hard thing to find. The idea of everything dependent on God and God having total control, well, that's the definition
Well,
of
no,
God.
I
I said I
just
quoted it
wanna
from-
hit the baseline there.
Yeah. So if God is the only value that has intrinsic value, it's obviously that is the most important ideal around. Yet, we live in a world where the idea of God can be ignored entirely. It's possible for someone to spend their entire life living in the world, right, enjoying the world, and not even realizing the force, the entity that is behind it all. And that's the one important piece of information, the one important thing, right, that they just miss it. They live their entire lives. You know, it's as if that the artist of a fantastic painting didn't sign his name at the bottom, right? As humans, all our encounters are almost entirely physical. Right? We have our physical. We see things. We don't see God. Right? One of the definitions that we have about God is God sees but is unseen. So the most powerful influencer on our perspective, on our consciousness, our vision, right, is incapable of perceiving God. And we can't touch God, right? We don't, that's idolatry is all about trying to change that paradigm. That's what idolatry is about. It's trying to take the idea of God and make it something that we can't relate to. But we know that that's idolatry. And that's essentially missing the point. Essentially, the world is designed, I would say, it's designed to enable the possibility of living your entire life without recognition, without cognition of the idea of God.
You just may not see it, but it's there.
Oh yeah, it's there. It's our lack of awareness of oxygen doesn't make it not work.
Is someone culpable if they take that?
Culpability. You're narrowing the point. I'm talking big picture. This is a broken world. Why is it broken? It's broken. I'll get to in a second, Dennis. It's broken because the most important, essential, fundamental, pivotal, crucial bit of information in the world, the one only important thing that there is not present, right? It's hidden, like you said. It's masked. It's there. It's not our lack of even if someone is an atheist, God still exists. That doesn't change the realities, right? The reality is the reality, right? If God exists, it's irrespective of what we think about that. But the world at large is capable of that. In fact, I would say it's even designed for that, right? What are our urges? Like, what motivates us? Right? Everything that relates to our body, right? How we look, how much money we have, what people think of us, all these things that are in diametric opposition to God.
All the physical things.
All the physical things, that's right. That is, by definition, a broken world. In fact, if you start off the first 2,000 years of history, and essentially it's chaos. Right? Why is it chaotic? What about the world is chaotic? The fact that the idea of God is incredibly distant from humanity's purview. And then we meet Abraham. And what's Abraham's role in history, in Jewish history, in world history? Monotheism.
Maybe not first.
Noah was a prophet. Right? Noah has conversations with God. Adam, even Adam after that first week was a prophet. Other people seem to, Abraham, his contribution, or one of his contributions, is the discovery of faith, of monotheism, on his own accord. With his own intelligence, with his own reasoning, with his own logic, with his own deduction, Abraham realized the Jewish God. Now I say the Jewish God, I mean the Jewish definition of God, which is the real definition, the reality of God. And that is the beginning of ending this darkness, so to speak, or this hiddenness, right? It's the first step in fixing the world. Now, a little secret I didn't tell you guys that I withheld from you is that the first time where the word Tikkun Olam is mentioned is in the Aleinu prayer that we say at the end of the prayer, and it's the second paragraph, and we say Letaken Olam b'malchut Shaddai, which means to fix the world with the kingdom of God. Which, by the way, if someone says, what does Tikkun Olam mean? Well, let's go to the first source. The first source says that the fixing the world with the kingdom of God. Why? Because that is precisely the area in which the world is broken. That the kingdom of God is not present everywhere. It's not ubiquitous. Abraham is the one who's going to introduce the idea and begin the process of undoing this. He's going to be the first one who's going to start influencing others, right, and disseminating the idea of the Jewish God. When was Abraham born? Anyone here knows?
After
That would be a correct statement.
Noah. Closer.
Eight generations after Adam.
You guys say 20 generations after Adam?
That's close.
Because there's 10 generations.
Give or take 15.
The Mishnah says that there's
20?
20 generations. Yeah, so the Mishnah says that there's 10 generations from Adam to Noah, and then there's 10 generations from Noah to Abraham. Abraham is born in the calendar that we're using, which starts from after the first week of creation. Abraham is born in the year 1948. It's a very convenient number to remember.
1948.
That's absolutely correct. 1948. It's an easy number to remember because it's the same number. It's 100 years after Karl Marx published the Communist Manifesto. Easy to remember. And we know that Abraham had some time in which he started his process of, obviously as a baby, he grew up in a family of pagans. He grew up in a community of pagans. He grew up in a world of pagans.
His father was an idol maker.
That's exactly right. His father ran the local idol shop, Idol Incorporated. And we know also that Abraham is the first person to study Torah. You guys know that? Abraham is the first person to study Torah. We have the Midrash that says Abraham lamad Torah. And in fact, he observed the Torah. And we find that Abraham actually started studying Torah at the age of 52. Which is interesting.
Observing, or did he start studying?
He started studying it and observing it, both.
So
And in fact, the Midrash says that he observed even rabbinic law, which is one of the great mysteries. One of the great mysteries is that how would he know the Torah when the Torah was not delivered to humanity till Moses appears much, much, much later, 500 years later?
The Torah pre-existed the creation, right?
That we also know. The Torah pre-exists creation. Absolutely. That's the blueprint for creation. So it was there, it was available, it just wasn't accessible to humans. Somehow Abraham was able to access that. And how did he do that without, Yeah, he maybe had a prophecy, but he didn't have that same exhaustive, comprehensive prophecy that Moses had. So Moses had this comprehensive, 40 years of unending prophecy to get the entire Torah. Abraham underwent an entirely different process in discovering Torah, which is fascinating. We'll go through it a little quickly here.
It does the same with all the patriarchs, right?
Well, once Abraham had it, then he taught it to Isaac and Jacob.
So what about?
Yes.
What about?
Get it on a thumb drive.
I mean, how do you know, for example, what animals are clean or unclean? I mean, besides the guy telling him, but that's part of the Torah. So was it bits and pieces, or was it?
Yeah, but even
what's
Noah.
also interesting about Noah
So
is
he knew some of it.
well, but Noah he lived in the same time period as Adam. So Noah's relationship with God it's a very interesting question because Noah believed in God as well, and yet Noah is not he's an important character in the story, but he's not the founder of the Jewish people. He's not
Well, yeah, I was just asking.
So he seemed to have had some sort of tradition all the way back from the times of Adam. But hold that thought a second. So what it says about Abraham is that he studied the entire Torah, and in fact he observed the whole Torah. And from where did Abraham study Torah? The Talmud asks. And it says as follows. It gives two opinions. Opinion number one, me'atzmo lamad. Any Hebrew speakers here? Me'atzmo. Me'atzmo. From himself. He studied from himself. Which, it's like those people that play chess against themselves, right? You switch the board.
What's himself? Sorry.
Atzmo. Atzmo means himself. Atzma will be herself. Atzma'ut would be independence by yourself. You're independent. Yom Atzma'ut, right? Right? You're by yourself. Made sense. Now, that's one opinion. Another opinion is that Abraham studied Torah because his 2 kidneys became well springs from which they taught him Torah. Now, what does that mean? It seems like Abraham underwent a process different than every other person who studied Torah. And that is that Abraham was able to have an internal teacher, so to speak. We know that the Torah existed, but it existed in another reality. It existed in a spiritual reality, not in a reality that's physical in any way. What else do we have within ourselves that is that is part of this other dimension? Anyone knows? We don't have the Torah. What? The soul, exactly. Abraham didn't have a Torah from without. He had a soul. The soul, the Talmud compares the level of purity of a soul to God himself. Right? The soul is something that you can't see. You can't touch it. You can't measure it. You can't weigh it. It's not something that we can quantify in physical terms. It's a certain piece of this other reality, the spiritual reality that we have within ourselves.
Okay, so I got a question.
Now, so this is the secret to unpacking this. Now, therefore, Abraham was able to tap in to this reality via which he studied Torah. And in fact, we know, just to finish this thought, we know that the soul and Torah are almost synonymous. We have the famous Talmud, I may have mentioned this in the previous class, the famous Talmud that talks about a child in utero studying the entire Torah. Did I mention that?
Yeah, and then when it comes out...
If an angel comes and makes him forget it. Well, makes it clear, if you critically analyze that particular piece of Talmud, you'll find that what happened, how does a child know the entire Torah? It's because the child is a soul at that point, and therefore the soul innately knows the whole Torah. And then at birth, he gets the influence of the body, of the physical, and then he forgets it. But essentially, it's still there. It's just covered over by the influence of that physical. If you were able to uncover that, you could study Torah internally, from within, so to speak. Abraham, the great Abraham, he was able to do that. Thus, he was able to access the Torah way before it was delivered to us, from without, so to speak. But we find that Abraham studied Torah at the age of 52, which is interesting because it's exactly at the 2,000-year mark, which we would say is perhaps the next phase of unpacking or reversing this broken world. So we start off with the broken world. God is not anywhere in the world. It's not, it's paganism. And then comes Abraham, and Abraham starts the process of changing role. He breaks the chaos. He has the one candle in the darkness, if you will, a part of my metaphors. He's that one force that is going to begin the process of undoing that.
What's the second world called?
Torah.
2000.
Go ahead.
I got 2 questions. Question number 1 is, you said the patriarchs knew the Torah because of their soul and they practiced.
Well, I said Abraham studied the Torah from within. He taught that to Isaac and Jacob. Yes.
And they kept
the entire Torah in Israel.
So when they went to Egypt.
So, for example...
So Jacob married 2 sisters outside of Israel. And that's why when they... I knew your question. And that's why when they came back to Israel, right as they're about to enter Israel, right, who dies? Who dies? Who did he marry first? The second one dies. That's right. He married Leah first. Thus Rachel is one who encroaches on this prohibition of not marrying 2 sisters. Thus she's the one who has to die. Yeah, well, that's the Ramban. It's the Ramban. It's not mine.
Okay.
Second question. Go ahead.
Calculations.
Yes.
You said 10 generations after Adam.
10 generations out of Adam is Noah. 10 generations after Noah is Abraham. So if you look at
generations.
Yes.
So 20 generations of the average lifespan you're saying is about 100.
No, that's not how you calculate generations. The way you calculate generations, right? How much older are you than your son? Right?
Well, when did you have him?
How old were you?
How old were you when he was born?
So is the average life 28? That's not how you calculate. That's not.
It's like 40 years.
All you
No,
gotta do
the
is
average, the way you measure, just a little secret of mathematics here. The way you measure a generation is the average age of a parent at the time when their child is born. Thus, if a parent has 4 children, right, all the parents in the world, all the births in the world, how old are the parents? That's how you measure it. Right? It's the average age of a generation, the average age of the gap
Well,
between
it's
a
about
parent and
20.
child.
Wait, so that
No, it's much more than 20. It's probably around 30
That
nowadays.
makes your calculation even worse.
give and take all the
But back
teenagers
then it
in
was
the
like
world that
80.
have
Yeah,
kids.
but the majority,
It's
the
about
average
average
age.
is about 20.
Yeah, so according to the numbers, it would be 100.
Let's say the average is 30.
Okay, but at that time it was 100 probably.
Yeah, because they
We know. I look at Adam.
It's Adam.
Yeah.
Well, if you read it, they're not having kids until they're 100, 200.
Well, that's the
Sarah's
average.
120 years old, then he had.
Sarah sound like an exception, not the
Yes,
basic,
because there was a
she
change.
laughed and
Because there was a
blah,
change.
blah,
That's
so-
right. Yeah.
So I would not think that 100 would be the reality.
Because remember, Adam lived to 930, right? So yes, I actually recently made a video on youtube.com/torchweb. Please go check it out on what's the secret of the longevity
Your
of
brother
our
edited
fourth.
it on my face.
Oh, there you go.
YouTube, yeah.
There you go. So I made a video how they live so long. How do we tap into that elixir of life? There's an answer to the question of how they live so long.
No, it didn't answer. It answered
What was your question?
my question. So that they had babies at 100.
On average, over 2,000 years, we're
But
talking
it
about.
seems like from the Torah, Sarah is like, well, I'm
Well,
100, I
but
can't do
Sarah's
this
at the end of that. So like I said, I did answer the question because there was a change in God. Even says in the Torah, it says that God is changing the age
To
expectancy
120.
to around 120. That's right.
And that age change was when?
That age change was after Noah's time.
After Noah.
That's right.
But
So
hold
about
on.
halfway through that 20 generations, there's a radical change in.
After Noah.
the average
Cut
age.
away
So,
the
I
age.
have
Does
a
he
question.
say? So could that be interpreted? But that, to me, it could be interpreted 2 ways.
Yes.
One, I'm only going to allow man to live another 120 years. That's the lifespan of man. Or does it mean I'm only going to let Noah? You got 120 years to build the ark. Good luck. Go at it. If these guys repent in that time, then good.
No, it was after.
It was after. It was
Noah.
after that. It was after that. It was after that. That's right. It was after. It was the
It was
generation of
after
the
Noah passed
where
away.
they
It
built
was
that
after
big
the
tower.
of Babel.
Yeah, Tower of Babel. That's
No,
right.
no, but he said to Noah,
Yeah,
No.
it was hard. Yeah.
120 years.
No, he kind of said to.
Yes, to build the ark, but he said, "I will only let men live up to 120
That's right.
years
When?
after the Tower of Babel."
When?
This was after Noah's
Okay,
ark.
we could get a book and read it, but it's afterwards.
Wait, okay, I have a quick question.
There you
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's afterwards.
No, no,
Yes.
no, no,
I
He's
gotta
learning
find
from
it.
his kidneys, right?
Yes. I think yes. His kidneys. So what does kidneys
So, no,
mean?
no, that's not what I'm
Yeah.
asking.
It is.
I'm
It is.
asking,
It says, "I will
did
only
he
let man live to 120 years
Immediately
old."
know everything,
Bob, what do you
or
want to look for?
was it subconscious and then he learned? guess?
I have no idea how to answer that question because this is an experience
That's weird.
that we don't know of anyone aside from
Man's life to be 100.
yeah, exactly. I'll find it for you. Give it to me, Dennis. I'll find it for you.
It's not.
I'll find it for you. So yes, we don't know what the exact process is of that.
Didn't what's her face? She lived longer than even after that.
Who? No one lived over 120.
What was the life expectancy? She passed that.
Before Noah?
900 years.
I think she did.
Some less.
There's no way.
600, 900.
I don't know.
She's the
But it
oldest,
seemed like
the
they
longest living
couldn't
person.
There's
procreate
plenty of that.
after
But
100 years.
I don't know if anyone
Right.
after God said 120 years.
So he was saying
No, I
that
think
generation
like
was
modern.
an average of
People?
100 years at one point in time.
Genesis 6:3, he said,
I've seen
"My
it.
spirit shall not
18.
strive with man
Sure,
forever,
sure.
There you go.
because he's also flesh. Nevertheless, his days shall be 120 years."
There you go.
What does that
So
mean?
yeah. So that's the point. So yeah, 6:3. That's the point in which there's some sort of radical change in life expectancy.
Well, is it? But isn't that during Noah?
Well, that's here's before Noah, so I stand corrected. Unless it,
Well, after the flood, it was cut.
well here the
Prior to the flood,
We
yes.
assume so.
anyway, this
After
is
the flood, no.
chapter 6 is before the flood.
I'm looking at after the flood. It's after the flood.
No, it is before the flood. I just checked it.
I'm saying right here, Genesis 6:3.
Right.
It's only
Yeah.
it says
She
120
lived-
years.
Yeah.
She lived all after
So,
that.
so to me,
Either way, what's the end game here?
We don't know what it
Never mind.
means.
I was just
I was
asking about the
just-
calculation.
You
That's
see
all.
when
Yeah.
That was my question.
She went in controversy.
I'm
I'm
pulling
I
out
heard that she was
Hold
the
on.
oldest living character. I mean, longest living.
Now, to me,
So
let me ask you this.
yeah, go ahead.
So, not to get off the topic that you're.
We are
We're
yeah.
way off topic, but
It will be a miracle if we finish before 11.
Even before that, we see that the life expectancy of people prior to him, even God making the statement in the Torah that he'll not contend with man forever, and expecting it will be 120 years. You see the life expands going down. They're not extending. They're not living to 1,000 years anymore. They're living to 800. They're living to 700. Living to 600. So you see it progressively getting worse as time goes on, right?
Yeah.
So for me to say that then God says, that's it, that's 120 years. Yes, that could be possible, but at the same time, you can say that due to the fact that we weren't living according to a Torah lifestyle because of the chaos that existed, could not that affect the lifespan of man?
Absolutely. And that's why I think Talmud says that people die early because of their actions chip away at their life potential.
Exactly.
Talmud says that.
So if anyone was born before that, cannot live over 120 years.
No, okay, but
Jacob,
that's a simplistic way to look at it.
130.
Jacob was on 147. Jacob died at 147, and Abraham lived to 175.
Right.
So yes, it's clearly not meant to be that it's a hard deadline. I would say that perhaps it was the average. Just like today, 83 is the average, even though a lot of people live to 110. Right? So how long do people live for? I've asked you a question. How long do people live for? You say 83. Well, but in Congo it's like 43. Right? But in the United States it's about 83. Well, what do you mean? Someone's 100? Not possible. I think that's the average.
It's too late now.
I don't know what the question
I'm going
is.
to call his brother this weekend. Well,
The average lifespan
I'm
in
calling
Afghanistan
Aria.
for male is 40.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't understand what the question is. Like, if that's how long people live. How long do people live? 83? Really? My grandmother's 92.
Well, then you bring in Kabbalistic...
No, not Kabbalist. I'm just saying that's the average life expectancy.
No,
it
it is
doesn't
the
mean that people
average life.
cannot live
No,
that.
people will live beyond 120.
Well, why not? There was a guy in
My belief was
Japan.
120 was the max.
Where did that come from?
If you got that close from the Bible. But...
No, but you just read that Jacob outlasted
I
that.
know, I
Okay,
know.
so you-
but
It blows your mind.
Before
There's
that,
certain
when
people, yeah.
God said 120, that was like...
Yeah, but they're
Oh,
getting their two
max.
interpretations.
And then after that, no, I just realized, like, this blowing my mind. I'm going to call his older brother tomorrow.
We're stressing him
I'm
out.
going to be like,
Sorry, man.
something
I'm not
weird.
stressed
He
out.
looks, I mean, like, I am...
Let's go back to the subject at hand.
Alright,
Okay. Tikkun Olam.
We were talking about Abraham.
Yes.
Never gonna come back.
How Abraham got Torah. So that's how Abraham got Torah. Okay? He got Torah from within via the power of his soul.
Can we not get also Torah within?
We can, but I liken this, but it's a lot easier to get Torah from without. Like, just for example, it's possible, theoretically, I know you live in a subdivision, whatever, but if you're going to if you had a big backyard and no one was watching, you could, theoretically again, you could stick a pipe, 2,000 feet underground and pull up some oil, bring it to your basement, refine it, and put it in your car and drive.
Right.
Is that possible?
Sure.
It's possible.
Yeah. It's just significantly easier to just go to the Exxon station,
Right.
fill up gas. Right? It's
Well,
easy. Is it possible? I'm not saying. Is it possible? Yes.
But
It's just
I'm not saying that we
orders
get
of
the Torah.
magnitude more
We don't
harder.
get Torah the same way Abraham received Torah. But
Well, he didn't have any
but we get
opposition to Torah.
revelation. We get revelation internally, right? So we can read something where it goes, I don't know what this really means, and then read it again and be like, oh, I get it. God.
Yeah,
you
but
know,
remember, to
he revealed
Abraham,
something.
he had no internal
Right, he had
resistance.
nothing- yeah.
We are, if you're human, you're going to resist the Torah. Torah.
Yeah.
Why? Because the Torah is telling you to do things that you're programmed to not want to do. Right? So it gives you restrictions. What do you mean? I want to do this.
The soul wants to do it.
Why, and why? But the Torah is telling you
Body wants to do
no.
it, the soul
You
doesn't
got that's the
want to.
But Abraham didn't have that because Abraham he reached the Torah when that was no longer something which is distant from who he was as an individual.
So is there any tikkuning of that? Can you fix yourself?
But the second half of the discussion, if we ever get there, is how this parallels.
I thought in the Talmud it said you can't fix that.
If it's
Didn't
what?
it- Evil inclination. Didn't they say remove idolatry, remove promiscuity, and he said, yeah, we'll remove idolatry, but you have to have promiscuity.
That's right, because you know why? If there
For
was no,
procreation.
if there was
Yeah,
no,
I get that
if
part.
there was no urge for procreation, just like if people didn't get hungry, the only people that would not die of starvation would be the righteous people. And if there was no urge for promiscuity, but sexuality, then no one would procreate, besides for the righteous.
But to answer his question, you're not supposed. You can't get rid of your evil inclination.
No, so what you're quoting is what the Talmud talks about, where the great rabbis prayed and they destroyed the force or the inclination towards idolatry, and then they saw a fire in the shape of a young lion emerge from the Holy of Holies, and they didn't know what to do with it, so they put it in a barrel full of lead, because it was screaming on top of his lungs, and you can hear it 400 parsecs away, which is like miles and miles and miles away.
Wait, what was?
And then it's...
I haven't heard this part.
That's what the Talmud actually said. I can show it to you next time we sit in front of a Talmud. It says they put it in this barrel of lead so that no one would hear it. I said it quickly, so...
What did they put in?
This thing that emerged from the Holy of Holies when they made this prayer. And then they said, once the Almighty's listening to us, let's deliver as well the other thing that vexes humanity, the other inclination. And they did it, and then they went 3 days later, they're looking for an egg. They couldn't find an egg to make an omelet, because everyone stopped procreating. Everyone. There wasn't a single egg anywhere. So that, oh gosh, once we turn over this, then we won't have the continuity.
Turn it off.
So then they said that they prayed that at least the desire for incest would go away.
Which tractate is that from?
It's in two places. It's in Yoma and Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin, I think it's in 63 or 64.
I've researched track dates and Google is really messed up with those.
Yeah.
Sanhedrin 87A.
No, Sanhedrin, I think it's 64. 63 or 64. If I was connected to the internet, I'd to Google it for you. But unfortunately, you gave me a Wi-Fi password.
63,
I can get the password.
It's okay.
We don't want you cheating out.
Either way.
No, the one with the Yoma, because I had that one.
Which one?
The Yoma.
Which one was it?
In Yoma, I think it's my memory
I'll
tells me it's
I'll write it down so I can look at it later.
it's I think it's 160
the whole thing,
63A. Either way, where were we? So that's Abraham. Let's move on to Torah. So what's Torah? No, let's stop. What happened to Abraham? What was one of the most momentous events in Abraham's life? Well, there's a lot of momentous events.
Circumcision.
So you got the mitzvah of circumcision,
That must have been very
which is the first mitzvah in the Torah to give him to Abraham, right? But also, additionally, God gives him a very important prophecy. He has a challenge. He has a bunch of challenges.
Yes.
But then God, after all of that, God gives him a prophecy, a crucial prophecy, which is related to our discussion.
And we're going to be slaves in Egypt.
He tells him, first of all, you should know you're going to have a nation. You're going to be the father of the Jewish nation. You're going to get Israel. You're also, he predicated on that, you're going to have to go to slavery in Egypt, which is an interesting question. Why is that necessary for us to go through the pain of being enslaved as a prerequisite for us to be the Jewish nation? Interesting question. But that is essentially where the Jewish people are founded. And it's because of Abraham that we were chosen. It's not just random coincidence that Abraham is the one who discovers God on his own, and Abraham's kids coincidentally are chosen randomly. We won the lottery. Essentially, we are chosen because Abraham, our forefather, was this great individual who took on the mission of Tikkun Olam.
So he was given an option.
Well, of course, everyone was given an option. Right? Abraham on his own.
There we go. Back
So
to free.
essentially, we chose God more than God chose us. It wasn't just randomly that Abraham said, "Your kids are going to be, have a land of Israel and have the responsibility of taking this mission from an individual level to a national level. Essentially, as being the Abrahamic people, we are responsible for fulfilling the mission, the destiny of Abraham. And thus God says, you started it, you are an individual. This is going to become a nation. And this nation is the nation that's chosen. Why? Because you are the one who, on your own account, on your own accord, not because you were. It could have been anyone essentially, but you were the one who did it, and therefore your kids will be the ones who complete it. Thus, it's not random that we were chosen.
Damn you, Abraham.
No, thank you.
Let's move on to the next. So, what happens? What's the next section? Torah. What does Torah mean? What do we know about Torah? Right? Torah, someone mentioned, was given to the Jewish people. You mentioned that, right? Okay, so what's it given to us for? Could we argue, perhaps, that the Torah is our national guide for Tikkun Olam?
Of course, arguable.
I think exactly. It means, as a nation, we are given, once we become a nation, when do we become a nation? We become a nation at Mount Sinai, or at the Exodus, that entire period. Ben, would you mind closing the bathroom door? It's making me nervous. Sorry. I'm weird though. I have these eccentricities. I think my grandfather had the same ones as well. He would know if the bathroom's open at the other end of the hall. Close the bathroom. I tell my kids, close the bathroom. Sorry. I don't know why. I'm weird. Sorry. So.
That's not weird, though.
And also, I feel like we're talking about Torah. You shouldn't have a bathroom door open. Whatever.
Yeah, that's what you want to close. Go on.
So, Torah is when we, as a nation, we have this guide that's going to help our nation be standouts in fixing the world. Now, what happens, and I want to hold that thought again because I'm going to come back to it. And you'll see the questions addressed. Or just ask me now. Moses. And so if you were to say, who was the most important leader from the second of the three of the tripart, it's Moses. And lastly, right, Messiah. So it's Messiah, obviously we know as the individual Messiah, but there's also Messiah, the idea, if it's 2,000 years. And that's the ultimate completion of what was began by Abraham in undoing this process. And that is where it's not just a national prerogative of the Jewish people, but it's a global prerogative of all humanity. Whereas what began with Abraham is going to be universal. And in fact, for us, we live in a world, we have the gift of hindsight. We see now, 2,000 years ago, essentially, the Jewish people were oddballs in the theological arena. We were persecuted, by the way, by the Romans as being atheists. Why? Because we believe in this one invisible God. An invisible God? Really? You can't see the God? Right? That's not a God at all. We have 30,000 gods, says Dio Cassius, the great Roman historian. That's what they had. You guys are atheists. The idea of the Jewish God was totally isolated amongst the Jewish people. And then what do you find over the past 1,000 years? If you talk to people today, pretty much almost everyone you meet, if you talk to them about God, they're either talking about the same Jewish God that we believe in, right, or something which is close enough, within striking distance of the idea of one power that one entity that has all the power consolidated within it. The idea of paganism is extinct, essentially. Now, I want to point out that the Christian definition of God, that is, we would classify that under idolatry, because that's not the Jewish God. But it's a lot closer than the Romans or the Greeks or the ancient Babylonians. You can't see it exactly. It's much, much, much closer. But the past 2,000 years has been essentially an entire radical phase of this process. Whereas it's not just us, it's the Christians and it's the Muslims, essentially. These two massive religions that kind of assisted us in disseminating this idea. And by the way, where do the Muslims come from? And where do the Christians come from?
Isaac.
Esau. Right? Essentially, this is Abraham's son, the other son, and Abraham's grandson, the other grandson. Those are the fathers of these other religions that are also, in their way, fulfilling the Abrahamic destiny. And the idea of Messiah, what's the idea of Messiah? Where this idea becomes universal. So there'd be some Jewish leader we would call Messiah, but the idea is what we're talking about now, where there's a universal acceptance of the idea of God, and therefore a complete fix. Right? And that's what the world is about. That's the universal vision, the purpose of the world at large. Right? This entire thing is about a process, a world that was broken by design, of course, right? But something was lacking, and then we have 6,000 years to undo that. And we have mapped out in front of us what this 6,000 years looked like, and how there's various increments. There's Abraham and what he does, and what he introduces as an individual, then maybe a family, and swells into a tribe. And then we have the Torah. We're a nation now. We have a guidebook, and we have what we say is going to be a lasting vision for the world, but starts at home, with our nation. And then the idea of Messiah is total dissemination of this idea, make it totally universally known and accepted. And then we look at where we are today. We're very, very close. Who's left in the world? Where are the pagans left in the world? And I would still argue, by the way, that even if a lot of people believe in God, maybe it's not as present as it ought to be. So we still have room to go, but we're very close. You're saying, Dennis?
Well, I was, you mentioned the Christians and the Muslims, and I feel like the Christians are a lot more Judeo.
Actually, the opposite's true.
And the Muslims are the complete opposite.
Well,
the Christians are more accepting of
that's recent. That's very, very recent. I want you to just
no. I believe that
do
the
some
Christians
historical
were persecuted the Jews. Obviously,
much worse. Orders of magnitude
way
worse.
More, yes. But even though their beliefs are that was in the Jews, they still believe that the Jews were the ones that started everything.
But the Muslims don't deny that either.
No, but the Muslims are against Judaism. No, the Muslims reject Judaism. They believe there was the Muslims that took the heritage on.
Both of them kind of follow the same path theologically, or even ideologically, and that is where they both accept the idea of the Jewish people being chosen and Abraham and whatnot, but then they have the idea of replacement.
Yes, replacement.
Either way, we're looking not from their perspective, from our perspective. Maimonides writes.
No, I believe that, but it's just that the Jewish culture hasn't been really booming as much as Christianity was for the last 1,000 years, and now Islam is.
Yeah, but
Judaism is still not.
We're never going to be a big.
We're limited in numbers.
We're never going to be great.
But are you saying that we're insignificant?
No, what I'm saying is that where is that 2,000 years of Messiah come into play?
Well, so you're saying what's our role in Messiah? Is that the question?
Yes,
That's a good question.
Yes. At what point does the Jews?
That's a good question. I like that question. What we got here is from Maimonides, where he points out that the roles of the Christians and the Muslims in Jewish philosophy is to help us, so to speak, in our yes. Now, but I want to point out with the point that you may have said, I don't know if you said this or not, but that the Muslims are in fact a lot closer theologically to Judaism than the Christians are. As for example, in law, you're allowed to walk into a mosque and pray. Well, if they don't, I'm saying you shouldn't do it probably, but you're allowed to do it. But you can't do it in church because that's considered a house of idolatry because they give certain divine qualities to JC. That's right, exactly. So that's.
Don't they do that to?
Muhammad's only.
Yeah.
Don't they do what? Don't they do
He's
what?
only a prophet, but he's not a thing.
No.
Yeah, they make Jesus.
Okay, so now I wanna stop for a second and do a nice callback to something we spoke about some other time here. I don't remember if it was here or maybe it was somewhere else, or someone else is in a different place in Cyprus, or maybe I didn't even talk about it here. My mind's so frazzled, and I apologize. But if you remember, did we do that story of Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Shimon who's coming out from his house of study? Did we do that here? I don't think we did. We find a commonality between Abraham, Moses, and Messiah. We're told in Jewish literature, Abraham rode on a donkey, Moses rode on a donkey, and Messiah is going to ride on a donkey. Obviously, it doesn't sound very significant. But then we find Jewish sources talking about the donkey that Abraham rode is the same donkey Moses rode and the same donkey that the Messiah will ride. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that there's actually an animal there somewhere waiting for its turn? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. I'm not trying to say not. But I'm saying, but what it is clearly telling us that this is not just a narrative of transportation. There's some meaning behind the idea of them all running on a donkey. And we know that these are the representatives of the three different states. They have a link together. And they are representative of a crucial universal idea. So what is it telling us? What's the idea of the donkey? So I want to share with you guys an idea. We'll see if we can debate it. I'm sure someone will ask a question that I'm ready for. So,
He's like,
yes.
Pastor Jones asking
Feed it to us.
So let's like this.
There was like a story with the donkey talking.
Well, yeah, that's the question.
Okay.
It's Bilam, right?
Damn question.
That was already the question.
Exactly. That's next week's parsha. Yes.
Male or female?
Usually, the donkey question is in 1 minute, but you're good. You're ahead of your peers. So like this, we know that in Hebrew, the word or the etymology of a word underscores its meaning. Everyone familiar with that idea? Good. The word, three-letter root, exactly. The word chomer means physicality. Right? Chomer means the physical word. That's the word chomer. The word chamor means a donkey. And we know that every time a donkey is portrayed in Jewish writings of any sort, it is always representative of the most physical thing, the thing that's most distant away from the spiritual. And we find that Abraham, he rode on top of a donkey. Moses is the same, Messiah is the same. What this means is not just that that's how they traveled. And I would argue that if Messiah, some guy came riding on a donkey, that I'm Messiah, we'd say maybe this guy's not all there, right? But I think the idea of being on top of something, being dominant, being the rider, being the guide, being in control, having the harness and the reins over the physical, that is a depiction of perfection. When you are riding on top of it, you're dominant, you're in control. It's essentially it's changing the paradigm of the way we start off life, and perhaps the way the world starts off. The world starts off that God is almost forgotten. It's not there, almost not there entirely. And all you see is the physical. And we start off life in the same manner. Like our soul is there, it's hidden within ourselves, but everything that we see and everything we encounter, everything we feel, everything that passes our consciousness is the physical. And our goal, collectively, right, as a species, as a universe, is to change that paradigm. That's what it's about. It's about bringing the idea of God into the world. But where's God? God's hidden under this mountain of physicality. Well, you have to switch it around. You have to make sure that you're in control of your physicality, not the other way around. Thus, Abraham, right, he was the one who brought the idea of God into the world. What did he look like as an individual? He was someone who exposed his soul. Right? He was riding the physical. The physical was subservient to him. Moses the same way, and Messiah the same way.
It's so sticky. Sorry, I didn't mean that.
Perhaps what this is telling us is how we go about doing this. Means there's Tikkun Olam on the big picture. There's Tikkun Olam on our individual little world that we have within ourselves. We have to reverse the trend, right? If you start off life, maybe you start off life, and how do you look? You look like the donkey's on top of you, right? And then you're schlepping around the donkey with you. And your goal is maybe to become that you're perched on top. You're in control. Your soul, that is. Abraham, Moses, Messiah, they are representative of these major changes because they, as individuals, but also how they influence the world around them collectively, they demonstrated this point. They were in control. Now to your question. Bilam. What else did he do with his donkey? Do we know? He beat it. What else did he do with his donkey?
He was riding on top of it. What do you mean?
You said
he talked to it.
He talked to the donkey.
Yeah.
Okay. What else did he do with his donkey? Anyone knows?
He tried to lead it someplace and it didn't go, right?
He was trying to control it, but it would.
He was trying to control it. He wasn't to control it. He was talking to it as well. And the Talmud says, and I'll try to say this in a somewhat cryptic way, that he had an intimate relationship in the way you don't want to think about with his donkey as well.
Coitus with a donkey.
That's absolutely correct.
Let's get past this. We're all adults.
Now, what's the significance of that? I don't know. But I think what it's telling us is that he was not in any way in control of the donkey, above the donkey. Rather, he was kind of the same. He was enmeshed with the donkey.
I think he was kind of below it. That's where the jihad came from. And
that's a change.
I've read a lot about
So,
Muslims.
Rabbi, why
Yes.
is the donkey portrayed as a non-spiritual animal?
It's a good question. I think perhaps it's a very physical thing. Like, you hit the donkey. It has like no spirit to it,
It's an ass.
Well, I mean, why can't, well, for example, like a cow, the red heifer is one of the most spiritual animals.
Why is a cow not a donkey?
I don't know. That's a good question. But that's an established fact that the donkey, the Homer. It's a good question. What about it? I don't know much about the meaning behind the chamor. We could do some research about that. But it's a good question. But it is there. It's widely sourced. It's not. I don't even find one source. Go ahead.
What if it wasn't the donkey? It was just something inside the donkey.
Whatever it is, there's something about the donkey which represents that, and that's clear throughout Jewish writings. Torah. Torah, if you were to crystallize what the Torah does to us, it helps us get on top of that donkey. It helps us be in control of our physical. It helps us moderate our physical, mitigate, attenuate our physical, limit it. If you look at the Torah, you see restriction, 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 restriction. That's what you see. Is that trying to make us miserable? Is that what it's really all about? Let's think how we could just torture humanity with the most effective way. Is that what it is? No, it's guiding us, but it's guiding us to what? To limit, right? Restrictions on what? Restrictions on donkey domination. Every single one of the prohibitions, every single one of the 365 categories of prohibitions in the Torah are activities that we would want to do physically. And therefore, that's the conflict. That's why it's hard to observe the Torah, because the Torah is telling us to do things that we want to do. No, but why do we want to do it? Our soul, I assure you, does not want to do it. It's because the paradigm of who we are and who we start off life as is that we are much more, we feel much closer to the influence of our physical. And that's broken. That's the broken world. We don't feel it's broken because we feel that that's us. I want it because that's how broken it is. We were conned into thinking that what I want is what my physicality wants. Because by design, our soul is buried so far deep we don't even feel it. We shake a lulav when we eat matzah. We feel like we're chewing crackers. We don't feel it, We feel, we have a tangible reality, and we have something which is, an idea that's in the sky, whatever. When the rabbi talks about it, maybe it made sense, maybe it doesn't, who knows. Our reality is our physical. That's what we start off life with. And that's why Torah is hard. But Torah is trying to right the wrong. Torah is trying to fix the broken world within us. Right? And by that, fix the broken world around us. To expose our soul, to unpack it, to find it, to take that is hidden within ourselves and within the world at large, and expose it to the world. And that is Tikkun Olam, letaken Olam malchut Shaddai, to fix the world of the kingdom of God. That's what it's about. Right? That's how we do it. We expose the kingdom of God. Right? We expose our soul. Right? Those two things parallel each other.
Where does it talk about the nation will cling to the basically to the tzitzi basically of, and like follow the last, like who's your God, basically that obviously that you are the light to the world, like where does it talks about that,
What? I'm sorry.
that the clinging to basically to the Jewish people, somewhere it mentions about that, to the tzitzit or something.
Tzitzit?
Right. It's just I've read that somewhere.
I want to talk about a more. I want to talk about mitzvah to your point, but in a more. I mentioned that Abraham got one mitzvah, right? What was the one mitzvah that Abraham got?
Circumcision.
He got the circumcision, right? Now, what are the blessings that we say by circumcision? Anyone knows what the blessings we say by the circumcision? Well, we say a few different blessings. There's a few before.
I didn't have to do it at the age of Abraham, did I?
We say some of them. There's only one blessing that we say before the circumcision, which is the blessing that we say before any mitzvah that we do. Blessed are you, Hashem. Asher Hashem says Tzivanu. The same preamble. Al Hamila, on doing the bris milah, on the circumcision. Immediately after the circumcision, the father of the child says the blessing, a blessing that we have no. It has no parallel in any blessing. Baruch atah Hashem asher k'nisham tzivanu lahachniso b'vriso shel Avraham Avinu, to enter the child in the covenant of Abraham. Thus, this mitzvah is the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people, given to Abraham. It's the mitzvah on which God tells him, your nation, your children would be the nation. Right? It's the mitzvah on which kind of our role as the chosen people is solidified. And it's the first mitzvah we do as a child. And we say by the mitzvah, the blessing that we say is, we're now entering the covenant, the special fraternity of Abraham.
The circumcision mitzvah, was that first with Abraham, or was it later introduced to the Jewish nation in Deuteronomy, right?
Well, yes, it's. You wonder if it's repeated?
I'm sorry, I thought the first one was for Abraham. The second one was for.
It wasn't. It's repeated in Leviticus.
Leviticus.
Well, yeah. The question is, some mitzvahs that were given, but were not repeated. Means the question is like, which mitzvahs are part of the Noahide mitzvahs and which ones are not.
So that blessing, it says to enter the covenant of Abraham. It's interesting because that relates it to the covenant that he made with God, but we don't say the covenant of God.
Right, but that means the covenant that Abraham had with God. Essentially, we're saying. Go ahead. Yes. Let the Talmud ask your question. It's a good question. Which interesting, we know that the Muslims do circumcise. Most Christians also as well. But no, they don't have the same mitzvah. It's a Jewish mitzvah. It's only a Jewish mitzvah.
So if it's a Jewish mitzvah.
So yes, they have a role, like ideological role, but they're not they're not part of the same relationship that Abraham had. No, well, Abraham circumcised his kids as well, all of them. Yes, but that doesn't perpetuate. That's right.
The Muslims circumcised because of the covenant with Abraham.
Yes, because they linked themselves to Ishmael. That's why they used to do historically. They did it at the age of 13 because that's how old Ishmael was.
But God said the covenant would only go through Abraham's seed.
Right.
Zerah.
That's right.
Seed,
Either way,
Ishmael was not his seed though.
Ishmael was not.
It was not. Yeah, it was not Sarah's seed, but it was his seed.
But it was still Abraham's seed.
That's right.
It was still his seed, but it came through him and Sarah.
He said
He
that
said Sarah will have a
become
child,
powerful nation.
and that's how it would come.
but
And he said, "I'm going to have it with a handmaid."
What is the difference made between that?
But God told him, "You're going to have it with Sarah. Sarah's going to have a child."
Her,
He never said.
He
"You're gonna just have a kid."
right? Because
Yeah, he said
in Isaac, Isaac will be your legacy.
Yeah.
So-
That's what
going
the
back to the
covenant
question,
of circumcision.
Go ahead.
With him.
it
And that was
sounds
his
like
Ishmael.
that commandment was made just to Abraham.
Well,
Later
no,
to the
like I
Jewish
said,
people.
well,
To his
but the commandment that was given to Abraham, we mentioned that Abraham kept the entire Torah.
But even
Well, why did he keep that part of the Torah?
Had to get circumcised his kid.
You know, but the Torah that was given to Abraham, that doesn't mean that was continued on by his family. You know,
But the blessing is just unique. How it mentions
it's a unique blessing.
Abraham and not God.
Well, no, it does start off with Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. It's the same preamble that we have to all blessings, but means that the relationship that Abraham had with God, and that special covenant, that special connection, what makes us chosen, the chosen people, right? That is solidified on day 8 of a child's life, which is interesting. Now, another interesting thing that I think is maybe a little striking, and that is that we find 2 places in the Talmud. Actually, one of them is in Midrash, one of them is in the Talmud, that talk about Abraham sitting at the doorstep.
Of the tent with the angels.
No, go on. That's at the end.
I don't know. We'll continue your sentence.
Of
After,
Abraham sitting at the entrance of Gehenna, and doesn't allow anyone with a circumcision to enter. And if someone sinned so much that he has to enter, well, then they have to undo the circumcision. So they have to take another foreskin and put it on, and then they can go in. Which, this is a very interesting, whatever. Either what I want to take away from that is the fact that, once again, our circumcision links us to Abraham. We're part via our circumcision, and we're linked to the fraternity of Abraham, and therefore we have a special role of chosen people. And maybe there's no room for chosen people or people that are part of this mission in what Gehenna is. Maybe I'm just throwing that out there, but I think it's a very interesting piece of Jewish teaching. So why do we circumcise? Well, what's that all about? It's just
Sign of the covenant.
It's just-
in the flesh.
we're just-
It's part of it's a physical sign of an inward.
so we're just branding ourselves. Is that what it is?
It's a clean thing. Too.
That's also true, but I think that's ancillary.
It's a sexual thing.
Okay, so you guys are all saying very good things. I found in Jewish writings 5 different reasons why we circumcise. There's maybe more, but I found 5.
What's number 1?
Number 1. Let's start with number 1 here. But I want to say how all these 5 essentially underscore the entire discussion we've had till now.
It's like God says, I will cut you.
You're limiting your physical.
So let's start with number 1. Number 1 is we are not perfect. A child is born, and you count the fingers, and you count the toes, and you look at the ears, and you look at the chin, and thank God everything's perfect. And then you think, this kid is perfect. And then they're 1 and 2, and you're like, whoa, goodness gracious, there's a lot of room to work here.
How are females not perfect?
Females is a good question. Maybe females are less imperfect. Maybe females, it's a good question. But let's finish this point.
Females don't need to
Okay,
get
okay,
butt
okay.
out for
As long as we on the same page, nobody's perfect. Let's go on.
So,
God is both female and male, but mostly female.
So,
That's another day.
there is an importance that we have to realize, even right away at the beginning, that our life is about perfecting ourselves. And even something as basic as our body is something which even that's not perfect. And we're showing in our body that you should know that this life is what's it all about. It's about trying to fix what is broken. And then not only with you, not only as an individual, but as a community, and as a society, and as a family, and as a nation, and as a species. That's what it's about. Thus, we demonstrate at the beginning of the child's life that need person. Now, I want to say a point that once you're going to make it granular about man and wife, or man and woman, that is, the real answer to your question is that Adam, man, was created only one. Well, where's the woman, right? So later it was parsed out. But what's clear is that Adam, the original Adam, was both male and female. Thus, we say the whole idea of finding a spouse and 1 + 1 = 1. That's kind of finding your other half. What they call your other half. You heard that? Your other half. You heard that?
More male or female?
I don't know.
Well,
Probably.
one
One side was
came
male
out of a
and one
man.
side was
Something like
Yeah,
that.
more
And he was
male.
already 50-50
it
75%,
was like one.
because, you know,
And they were like,
you have to
that's
pay
Right,
all this.
right. Yeah, that's what I
So
said.
the actual, so the
They have
actual
separated.
act of circumcision,
Right?
women are part of that.
Yeah, well, the idea is that, you know, it's if we look at a man and a wife as one unit, then yes, there's certain elements that each contribute. You know, there's some mitzvahs that women have only. Well, what do you mean? Men don't need to perfect themselves? Of course, everyone needs to perfect themselves. You know, but is the mitzvah of circumcision, is that a man's mitzvah? No, it's a Jewish mitzvah. You know, so it's done for the boy, and some mitzvahs are done for the girl, and that's fine. But my point that I wanted to say is the fact that we view a man and a spouse as being two parts of one whole. Right? They're not exclusive of each other. They're complementary of each other. Thus, if a man has it and the woman doesn't have it, it doesn't mean that the woman doesn't have it. It means that the woman's manly half has it or whatever. Okay. Either way,
the woman doesn't become perfect until she marries.
No, whatever.
Because the circumcision for the woman is the breaking of the hymen. Ah, that's deep. That's deep right there.
That's a little dirty, but
That
let's
is
go on.
Moving right along. I'm gonna have to edit that out.
Just saying.
Are you recording this?
I am. That was Dennis.
Sorry.
No.
No, that was Sender. Okay.
Okay.
Either way, so we have reason number one. Let's move on to reason number two. This is from the Ramban. The Ramban says that if you look at the location of the circumcision, it's at it's at the kind of the epicenter of man's challenges in life, and it's the area where their donkey, so to speak, their Yetzer Hara is going to reign supreme, almost more than anyone else. And specifically there, God says, I want to make a covenant with you because they're at the point of the greatest contention that you're going to have with your body and soul. Right? I want you to remember, there is where the battle lies, and there is where you need to stand up for God, so to speak, or for your soul. Number three we find is the idea of, we know circumcision is a two-part process. There is the removal of the foreskin, and then there's the exposing of what's called in Jewish literature the atar, which means the crown. Without getting too graphic, that's the part of the part that's exposed is a crown. Why a crown? And we find many references to the idea of circumcision being representative of the idea of what Judaism is really trying to teach us at large. And that is that our responsibility is to reveal the crown of God in the world. It's about removing the riffraff, removing the physicality, taking that off, and now exposing the crown. And that part is the completion, so to speak, of the process. Number four, we find about King David. King David's in the bathhouse, and he's depressed. Why is he depressed? Because he says, now I am bereft of mitzvahs. There's no mezuzah on the door. I'm not wearing my tzitzit. I'm not wearing my tefillin. I can't study Torah here. What do I have? And then it says he looked at his circumcision. He says, there's one mitzvah that never escapes me. And that's the idea, like you mentioned, the idea of constantly having a mitzvah that's always with you, and that cannot you cannot lose it. It's something you always have. And lastly, like the idea that you guys mentioned, that's weird with Jews, and this is the brand of a Jew, and this is the Abrahamic fraternity, and this is the mitzvah that the Gentiles throughout the centuries have banned more than anyone else. We know that in this past century, the 20th century, in Soviet Russia, you were banned on pain of death sometimes if you gave your child circumcision. We know that Hadrian in the 2nd century of the Common Era, and Antiochus in the 2nd century before the Common Era.
But they just tried to ban it
just recently. And it's so interesting. Like, why don't they ban other things? It seems like, they do. Some of them they have done as well. But this is the one thing that somehow irks, for whatever reason, just rankles the Gentiles. And it's bizarre. The Gentiles mean the Gentile who want to oppress the Jewish people. And it's an interesting thing. You find it again and again throughout history. And we know that there were some Jews that even wanted to be like everyone else. They would undergo circumcision removal surgery, which is inadvisable.
I can imagine.
But and actually, interestingly, I just thought of this right now. But it's Maimonides has a list of people that have no portion of the world to come, and in it he brings a laundry list of all the greatest sinners that you could possibly imagine. The worst sinners, and at the end he writes, and the people that reverse their circumcision. Moshche Orla, people that reverse circumcision. And the question is, what's so bad about that? Perhaps what they're saying is that we don't want to be part of the Jewish people. Right? We don't want to have a stake in this eternal mission of the Jewish people. Okay, so you don't have. Right? If you're saying I'm not part of this, right? You are disassociating yourself from. You're taking off the jersey. You're taking off the star. Star's a bad example.
No,
right?
It's worse because you're reversing it.
You're right, exactly. You're saying I don't want to be part of this. Okay, so you're not part of it. So what does it look like if you're not part of this? Well, you got no portion of the world to come because you're not part of this mission of bringing about the world to come. You're saying you're out. It's not by dint of the sin, as if the sin is so great. It's by dint of the expression of disinterest in the mission.
Of rebellion.
Yeah. Either way, these are the 5 reasons. I want to say that essentially these 5 reasons are all different elements of what we discussed tonight. Number 1, the reason we're not perfect. Yes, that's what life's all about. We're in a broken world. Collectively, the entire world itself is broken, and this is the process of undoing it. Right? And we demonstrate that with the circumcision. We're about fixing. And how do we fix? Right? How do you undo the model of the way it started off? What's the default? The default status of the world is broken. The default status of human is broken. Why is it broken? Because God's not there. Why is not God there? Because God, the influence that's going to bring you to God is in your soul. And where's that? I don't know. It's buried somewhere deep within you. You're broken as well. And how do you undo that? How do you switch it? Well, you have to start evening the playing field. Well, how do you do that? By suppressing your physical. Once you do that, well, you weaken the physical, and as a result, you strengthen the spiritual. As we said about Torah, Torah is about, it's all restrictions, a lot of restrictions, but what are the restrictions directed at? At restricting the free reign of your physical, of your materialist, of your donkey. That's what it's about. Right? Okay, so and then get to the Ramban that Ben quoted. It's specifically at the crucial point where your donkey, so to speak, is at the height of its powers. This one area in your life where you're most likely to fail, where you're most likely to feel the influence of your physicality, where the greatest challenges are going to lie. Specifically there, it's like this. It's pointing at, it's directing us towards the realization of this is what it's about. We have to stand up to our internal donkey, to our internal influence, and we have to limit it. We have to suppress it. By doing that, we'll accomplish what? Well, we'll bring out the crown of God. We'll expose the crown of God. That's what we'll do. You know? Once you follow this process, that's what it's about. What does it look like? You fix the world. Fix the world with what? With the kingdom of God. What's the end result? What's the aftermath of this 6,000-year process? You know what it is? It's the kingdom of God is exposed and available and visible to everyone. And you know what? This is something really important. This is something so important. This is something that you have to have with you at all times. Because essentially this one mitzvah is, in one fell swoop, right? It is everything that really life's all about. It's the insight into this whole big picture that we have.
Okay, so if men have the circumcision, how do women live with this one mitzvah? Or what is this one mitzvah?
You asked this question already. We already went through this already, Dennis. We said yes. It's not the fact that women doesn't have a circumcision. That doesn't mean that she's not responsible to take the lessons of the circumcision.
Yes, but what is the physical that she lives with?
Women don't need the physical as much as men do, because women tend to be more spiritual.
Live with it every month.
It's the time bound.
Okay, I'll take that. Okay, no more arguing.
Yeah, there's that.
Wow.
There's that. A reminder every month.
Wow.
Yay! Question, answer.
So,
Yeah,
but traditionally we know that historically women have always been more spiritual. So I would say that this very tangible, even physical, I mean, it's a bizarre mitzvah. It's a mitzvah that is a physical thing, so to speak. I think it's the men need it much more than the women. The men are more likely to be influenced by it, and they need it more.
They're a lot less emotional, a lot more harsh.
And you look at the mitzvahs of women. Mitzvahs of women are usually directed to be more emotional. So yes, it's by design where this is optimal.
I think just from women going through their male child going through that mitzvah is enough for them.
They have enough, yeah. It's could be kind of stressful. So that's that. This is how we. This is if we were to be asked the questions, what does it mean to be chosen people? Well, the answer is yes, we're chosen. Why are we chosen? By whom? Well, we're chosen by God. But why were we chosen? We were chosen because Abraham chose. Abraham was the one. He was the one. And it was not random.
We chose.
I'm sorry?
We chose.
Well, yes, we're Abraham's descendants.
Yes,
that's absolutely right. Says if that we chose God and we chose the responsibilities that go with this mission. Which, by the way, God promised us we will never disappear. Even though the factors are all in place to make us disappear. We're a small number. Everyone hates us. We are dispersed. We don't have a national homeland. We go into exile. That is all the ingredients for us to totally disappear. In fact, you have these great civilizations, the great empires, that had the exact opposite. No one hated them. Everyone loved them. They were everywhere. They were dominant. They had control. They had power. They had stability. They had everything, and then they're gone.
Those are in
like the Romans and the Greeks, right? They're gone. Where are the ancient Assyrians? Where are the Babylonians? They're gone. They were never dispersed from their land. Because we have a lasting responsibility for the world, and that's why, despite being having all the debt stacked against us, all the factors that ought to contribute to our disappearance, right, they're all gone. Right? I'm saying they're all gone. They're all gone, but they're ineffective in trying to make us disappear. And no matter how hard you try, and a lot of people have tried very hard, yet, this kind of opens another question. Yet, I would even make the argument that maybe the reason why we're hated so much, maybe that, in a way, does contribute in our continuity. Maybe the fact that we always retain our character, whether we're different or we're the same as everyone else, right, that is going to engender a reality where we're different. And when you look at the Torah, so you mentioned, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Threat of annihilation keeps you on your toes.
But not only that, not only that, the threat of annihilation keeps you different. And ironically, this is a terrible irony, but the more the Jewish people want to be the same as everyone else, and essentially repudiate the Abrahamic mission, there is where the anti-Semitism springs forth from, which is just mind blowing. You don't have to look very far. The greatest genocide or the greatest, I say greatest, but the worst, most horrific genocide in all of human history happened in the place where the Jews were most similar, most indistinguishable from the Gentiles. And it's remarkable that you would think that if the Jewish people are so irritating to the Gentiles, why would they get irritated in Germany, where Jews were almost indistinguishable? Temples in Germany were no different than churches. The Jewish people weren't this sniveling, short and long, crooked noses. All that what didn't exist. All the anti-Semitic literature the portrayals of Jews, it was nonsense. And how did that all just explode in progressive Germany? It's one of the great mysteries. But if you, with this attitude, with this perspective, and this has been the Jewish perspective, and even before the Holocaust, we go to any Jewish source about anti-Semitism, it talks about the fact that if we decide to abandon our mission and essentially say we're no different, we're not chosen, we're not special, we don't have a mission that's vital for humanity, for the universe, right? We're not the stewards of change, we're not the representatives of God in the world. No, we're no different. We're like everyone else. What do? We're abandoning our post. And at that point, there's going to be some force that's going to push us to say, no, you are different. And that being different, when it's foisted upon us by the Gentiles, can be very horrific, and very traumatic, as we all know. But we'll still survive. And ironically, those kind of experiences, and we've had many, maybe not as many of them on the scale as the Holocaust, but we've had many. And you look at the past 1,000 years of Jewish history in Europe. How many different cities were the Jewish communities liquidated from? How many different countries were we kicked out of from? That France kicked us out of France for hundreds and hundreds of years. Spain, of course, Portugal, England. Right? Shakespeare never met a Jew. He never in his life saw a Jew. There wasn't a single Jew living in England. Right? From the 1300s, we weren't allowed to until the 1800s. It's insane.
Once again.
Well,
We're moving out.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't quite compare that, but
Yeah.
either way, that's that, guys. So we're chosen by God. We're chosen for the mission because Abraham started it. We're going to continue it. The Torah is our guide to do that. What it does for us is enable us to create the model where everything's changed and it's fixed, and as individuals we're fixed, and as the world as at large is fixed. I would say, by the way, Rosh Hashanah, the holiday Rosh Hashanah, what's it all about? It's all about this idea, the entire holiday. We talk about it more maybe when the high holidays come up, but it is about the idea of God's supremacy and how, as Jews, that's our mission, and that's our reason for existence, and that's why we're going to survive another year. Right? And that's what it's all about. It's the shofar blowing is about God's kingdom. It's the judgment is about God's kingdom. It's the anniversary of the kingdom of God. It underscores the idea of why what's the role of humans, and that is to bring out the idea of God, even though we're designed to not do that. Thus, the birthday of mankind is essentially the birthday of God's kingdom, because only then is it possible for God to have kind of independent verification of his existence, and that's essentially the purpose of the entire creation. And it's our birthday as well, so we can reinvent the world, so to speak, and fix the world, but fix ourselves as well. Both broken worlds come to pass on Rosh Hashanah. So that's that, guys. There's more to this. There's a lot more to this. But I think this kind of does expose us to kind of what it means to Tikkun Olam. I think that unfortunately there has been a narrowing of definitions in Tikkun Olam. Who here thinks of picking up cigarette butts from the beach as Tikkun Olam, or going to the food bank? Like, we've been told that any good deed that you do for someone that's less fortunate than you, that's Tikkun Olam. And I'm not saying that that's not.
Part of it, but
it's part of it, but that's not what it is. I speak to young people and they say, "Oh, Tikkun Olam, yeah, I went to the food bank last year." What?
That's good, but
someone told me he spent 3 weeks picking up cigarette butts on a beach in somewhere in South America. Like, it means because there is a narrative that exists today that Tikkun Olam means doing good. Right? We see it means fixing the world. Define it. Right? Fixing the world. It's much more expansive, much more exhaustive, much more comprehensive than just one hour. Yes, of course. Look at Abraham. Read Abraham's story in the Torah. What's Abraham's story in the Torah? How is he presented? How is he configured as a character in the Torah? Anyone knows?
How is he configured?
What is his primary characteristic in the Torah?
Like entering,
A leader.
like strangers, letting strangers in.
Kindness.
So, kindness.
Yeah.
He is presented as the paragon of kindness. Right. We say chesed la'Avraham. Kindness is for Abraham. And we see the stories about Abraham. Abraham, 2 days after his circumcision, he's out there, he's waiting for guests, and he goes crazy when the guests come. He tells God, wait a second, right? He tells God, I'll be back with you, right? Just hold on, I got to tend to these 3 pagans. He's the one who prays for Sodom and Gomorrah, even though they were the antithesis of what he represented, but he prays for them. He cares for the people that he disagrees with. How he went to battle for his brother-in-law or nephew, Lot. Abraham's presented, and what does it say about Abraham's faith in the Torah? What does it give us about his narrative of discovering God and debating that? Huh? But it doesn't tell us the story. We meet Abraham, when you open the Torah, you meet Abraham at the age of 75. When he's told to go to Israel. That's when you meet him. What happened before that? Well, we want to hear the story about him and his father, and him and his neighbors, and him and the debate club. That's what we know. That's the story, with Abraham going around from town to town and lecturing. That's what he's famous for. I ask you guys, what is he famous for? He's famous for his monotheism. Where does it talk about his monotheism? His discovery of it, his perfecting of it, his analysis, his logic, his reasoning, his arguments, his deductions. None of that's in the Torah. What's in the Torah? His kindness. I think that there's a deep lesson here. I think that it's linking the Tikkun Olam at large to the behavior that results. I think what it's telling us, perhaps, or maybe one of the things that it's telling us, is that Abraham, he started with faith, he started with his monotheism, he started with Tikkun Olam at large, and what did that bear out on a behavioral level? How did he act? Kindness is the result of that. That's, I think, what it's telling us is that there's the mothership. Like, there's the big picture to Olam, and then there's everything else that is kind of related to, but it's also, but it's a result of this attitude. So I think that, yes, of course, being kind and helping the less fortunate, all that's part of it. And you know what? The Torah is about that. The Torah gives us 613 mitzvahs, a lot of different mitzvahs. You know, there's the first mitzvah, and I think the first mitzvah, more than anything else, tells us about, you know, what the goal of all the mitzvahs are, and the first mitzvah is circumcision. You know, we have a mitzvah before that's be fruitful and multiply, but that wasn't given to the Jewish people, or even the forebear of the Jewish people. It was given to Adam, which is interesting. Yeah. Now, the first Jewish mitzvah is that of circumcision. Well, the last mitzvah is writing the Torah. I would say that if the Torah is bookended by these mitzvahs, it's probably because it's telling us circumcision, that's Abraham's mitzvah, and all the meaning that we deduce from that, that's the end goal. You know, that's the end game. All the mitzvahs are contributing towards that as well, of course. You know? But that's the big picture. And I would say perhaps the mitzvah of writing the Torah, you know, if someone were to write the entire Torah, like, it means to actually invest your life in that. You know, to write a Torah, you're talking about 304,805 letters. Lots of letters. You know, it's a very immersive and protracted mitzvah that involves, you know, getting dozens upon dozens of hides of kosher animals and preparing. Right? It means invest in your life in this idea. Perhaps, you know, that's what it's about as well. It's telling you, yes, there's the big picture, and there's the, you know, the process of Tikkun Olam, but maybe at the end it's telling us, yes, it's something you have to kind of really invest a lot of time. I don't know. That's a theory. But either way, I think we can safely say that Tikkun Olam is much, much more expansive and broad than picking up cigarette butts or helping at the dog shelter, food, you know, going to the George R. Brown Convention Center and helping prepare turkeys for the food banks. Right, that's nice, you know, but there's a much bigger picture here. and it deals with cosmic forces and what God has planned, and it's all linked together, and it all makes a whole abundance of sense once you hear it. Yes.
Way more than could be explained in 2 hours.
No, we just did it.
No. What you told us basically was that it was way more than that.
Yeah, well, because of the
We
details.
touched a small part of it.
Yeah, well, we got the overview.
Yes.
So that's that, guys. Is there any questions? I know I feel like if I ended the class an hour ago, I'd get a lot more questions. And everyone just says, "Oh, it's 10 o'clock.
At this
I'm done."
point, we're like, whoa.
Either way, guys, I guess we'll see you next week. Is that the plan?
So announcements next week is at Tom's place.
Ooh, nice.
Send us the address.
He likes it there.
It was the first place that I came to teach.
That's
Oh,
right.
is it?
Yeah.
Oh,